Use a warm. Empathetic Tonima wiped the dust from another old picture frame in her small antique shop. The morning sun came through the dirty windows, making tiny rainbows on the wooden floor. She had been working in this shop for 3 years now, ever since her grandmother passed away and left it to her. But things were not going well. The shop was on Baker Street, between a small cafe and a flower shop, long ago. Many people came to buy old treasures from her grandmother, but now, most days were quiet. Emma counted the coins in her cash box every evening, and the number was always too small. Her rent was £300 every month, and she only had enough money for 2 more weeks' start and looked at the empty shelves and felt it. Her grandmother had filled this place with beautiful things and happy customers. Now it felt cold and lonely. She missed her grandmother's warm smile and kind words. Sometimes Emma wondered if she should just close the shop and find a regular job in the city. On this cold Tuesday morning in November, Emma heard the little bell ring as someone opened the door. Mrs. Wilson walked in slowly. She was an old lady who lived down the street. Her husband had died last month, and Emma had seen her walking alone every day since then. Mrs. Wilson carried a small wooden box in her hands. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked very tired. She placed the box gently on Emma's counter and took a deep breath. "Good morning, dear," Mrs. Wilson said in a quiet voice. "I need to sell this jewelry box. My husband gave it to me many years ago, but I cannot keep everything now. The house feels too big, and I have too many memories." Emma felt sorry for Mrs. Wilson. She knew how hard it was to lose someone you love. Emma had felt the same way when her grandmother died. She opened the wooden box very carefully. Inside, the box was lined with soft purple velvet. There were some old brooches, a few pairs of earrings, and a small silver chain. Emma was about to close the box when something caught her eye. Hidden under a piece of velvet at the bottom was something that made her heart skip. It was a golden ring with a small but beautiful diamond. The gold was old but still bright, and the diamond sparkled like a tiny star. Emma picked up the ring with gentle fingers. It felt warm and smooth. She turned it round and saw tiny words carved on the inside of the band. The letters were small, but she could read them clearly. "To Rose, my heart forever, Thomas, 1943. Emma stared at the words. This ring was from 1943, more than 8 years ago. Someone named Thomas had given it to someone named Rose. It was probably an engagement ring. Full of love and hope, Emma wondered who Rose was and what had happened to her and Thomas. "This is a beautiful ring," Emma said to Mrs. Wilson. "Do you know where it came from?" Mrs. Wilson looked at the ring and shook her head. "I bought that box at a garage sale many years ago. I never really looked at everything inside. I just liked the box itself. You can have everything for £20 if you want." Emma looked at the ring again. She knew it was worth much more than £20. The diamond was real, and the gold was pure. She could probably sell it for at least £200, maybe more. That money would help pay her rent and keep the shop open for another month. But as Emma held the ring, something strange happened. She felt warm inside, and she could almost hear her grandmother's voice saying, "Some things are more important than money." Dear Emma, the ring felt special, like it was meant for something more than just making money. Emma thought about Rose and Thomas. Where were they now? Did Rose ever get to marry Thomas? Did they have a happy life together? Or maybe something sad had happened. The year 1943 was during a big war. Many young men went away to fight and never came home. Mrs. Wilson, Emma, said, "I will buy the jewelry box from you for £20, But I need to think about this ring for a while." Mrs. Wilson smiled for the first time that day. "That sounds fine. Dear, thank you for being so kind." After Mrs. Wilson left, Emma sat alone in her quiet shop. She held the ring up to the window and watched it sparkle in the sunlight. She imagined Thomas buying this ring for Rose, maybe saving his money for months to afford it. She imagined him getting down on one knee and asking Rose to marry him. That evening, Emma closed the shop and went upstairs to her small apartment above it. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by her window, looking out at the street below. The ring sat on the table in front of her. Catching the light from her lamp, Emma knew she needed the money from selling the ring. But she also knew something else. This ring had a story, and that story was not finished yet. Somewhere out there, maybe Rose was still alive. Or maybe Rose had children or grandchildren who would want to know about Thomas and his love. Emma made a decision that would change everything. She would not sell the ring. Instead, she would try to find Rose, or Rose's family. The ring needed to go home where it belonged. Even if it meant Emma might lose her shop, she knew in her heart it was the right thing to do. Use a warm, empathetic Tonima woke up early the next morning with the ring still on her mind. She had not slept well because she kept thinking about Rose and Thomas. She made herself some toast and tea, then put the ring carefully in her pocket. Today she would start looking for answers. The old library on Church Street was only a 10-minute walk from her shop. Emma had been there many times before to read books, but today felt different. Today she was looking for a real story about real people. The library was a big stone building with tall windows and heavy wooden doors. Inside, it smelled like old books and dust. Mrs. Davies worked behind the front desk. She was about 60 years old with grey hair and kind eyes behind small glasses. Emma had talked to her many times before. Mrs. Davies always remembered what books Emma liked to read. "Good morning, Emma," Mrs. Davies said with a smile. "What brings you here so early today?" Emma pulled out the ring and showed it to Mrs. Davies. She told her about finding it in the jewelry box and about the words carved inside. Mrs. Davies listened carefully, nodding her head. "This is very interesting," Mrs. Davies said. "Let me help you look for information about Thomas and Rose. We have old newspapers from the 1940s in our back room. They might tell us something." The two women went to a quiet room filled with tall shelves. The old newspapers were kept in big books, with many pages bound together. The paper was yellow and felt soft, like it might break if they touched it too hard. Mrs. Davies knew exactly where to look. "Here are the papers from 1943, she said, pulling out a heavy book. "Let us start with March and look through each month." They sat at a wooden table under a bright lamp. Emma turned the pages slowly, looking at the old advertisements, news stories, and pictures. Everything looked so different from today. The clothes, the cars, even the way people wrote was different. After an hour of looking, Mrs. Davies pointed to a page. "Emma, look at this," she said excitedly. "Here in the wedding announcement section." Emma read the small print carefully. There it was, in black ink that had faded over the years. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennet are pleased to announce the engagement of their daughter Rose to Mr. Thomas Miller, son of Mr. and Mrs. William Miller. The wedding is planned for December 1943. Emma felt her heart beat faster. She had found them. Rose Bennet and Thomas Miller were real people who had lived in this same town 8 years ago. But as she kept reading through the months, she did not find any wedding announcement for December. "Let me check the other books," Mrs. Davies said quietly. She brought over newspapers from 1944. Emma turned the pages more slowly now. feeling worried about what she might find. In the middle of 1944, Emma found what she was looking for, but it made her feel very sad. There was a list of local soldiers who had died in the war. Thomas Miller was on that list. He had died in France in June 1944, fighting against the German army. He was only 22 years old. Emma felt tears come to her eyes. Poor Rose had waited for Thomas to come home, but he never did. The wedding that was planned for December 1943 never happened. Rose had lost the man she loved when she was still very young. "This is so sad," Emma said, wiping her eyes with a tissue. Rose must have been heartbroken. Mrs. Davies patted Emma's hand gently. "Many families lost young men in that war," she said. It was a very difficult time for everyone. Emma spent the rest of the day walking round town, talking to older people who might remember Rose Bennett. Most people were too young, or they had moved to the town after the war. But finally, she found someone who could help. Jenkins worked at the post office on High Street. He was a very old man with white hair and a walking stick. He had lived in the town his whole life, and his memory was still sharp. "Rose Bennett," he said, thinking carefully. "Oh yes, I remember Rose very well. She was a pretty girl with dark hair and a sweet smile. After Thomas died in the war, she never married anyone else. She lived by herself in a small house on Maple Street for more than 6 years." Emma listened carefully as Mr. Jenkins told her about Rose. She had worked at the local school as a teacher. She was kind to children and helped many families in the town when they needed money or food. But she always seemed lonely, like she was waiting for someone who would never come. "Rose died about 5 years ago," Mr. Jenkins said sadly. "She was 90 years old. I went to her funeral. There were not many people there because she had no family left. But I think there was one young woman, her niece maybe. She came from London for the funeral." Emma felt excited and nervous at the same time. "Do you remember the niece's name?" Mr. Jenkins thought for a moment. "Lucy. I think Lucy Bennett. She looked a lot like Rose when Rose was young." After the funeral, Lucy took some of Rose's things and went back to London. I heard she was a teacher too, just like her aunt. That evening, Emma went back to the library. Mrs. Davies helped her look through old records and phone books. They found Lucy Bennett's name and address in London. She lived in a flat in North London and worked at a primary school there. Emma wrote down the address with shaking hands. She knew she had to go to London to find Lucy. But she had very little money left. The train ticket would cost almost £50, and she would need money for food and maybe a place to sleep. But Emma knew she had to try. Rose had waited her whole life for Thomas to come home. Now Emma could bring part of him back to Rose's family through the ring. It felt like the most important thing she had ever done. The next morning, Emma closed her antique shop and walked to the train station. She carried the ring in a small velvet pouch that she kept close to her heart. The train to London was crowded and noisy, but Emma did not mind. She was going to complete a love story that had been waiting for 80 years. Use a warm, empathetic Tonelli train pulled into London station with a loud noise that made Emma jump. She had never been to such a big city before. When she stepped off the train, she felt very small. There were thousands of people walking in every direction. Everyone seemed to know where they were going except her. Emma held her small bag tightly and looked round. The station was huge with high ceilings and bright lights. Signs pointed to different parts of the city. But Emma did not understand most of them. She felt scared and excited at the same time. The velvet pouch with Rose's ring was safe in her coat pocket. Close to her heart, outside the station, the noise was even louder. Cars honked their horns. Buzzers made rumbling sounds, and people talked loudly on their phones. Emma had written Lucy Bennet's address on a piece of paper, but she did not know how to get there. A kind police officer helped her find the right bus stop. The bus ride took almost an hour through busy streets full of shops and tall buildings. Emma looked out the window and saw so many different people. Some wore expensive clothes. Others looked poor like her. Children played in small parks between the buildings. Old people sat on benches feeding birds. London was full of life. But Emma felt lonely in the crowd. When Emma got off the bus, it started to rain. She did not have an umbrella, so she pulled her coat hood over her head. The rain was cold and made her shiver. She walked slowly down the street, looking at the numbers on each house. Her shoes were old and not waterproof, so her feet got wet quickly. Finally, Emma found the address she was looking for. It was a tall building with many flats inside. She pressed the button next to Lucy Bennet's name and waited. A voice came through the small speaker. "Hello, who is it?" "My name is Emma," she said nervously. "I am looking for Lucy Bennet. I have something that belonged to your Aunt Rose." There was a long pause. Then the voice said, "I am sorry, but I think you have the wrong person. I do not know anyone named Rose." Emma's heart sank. She looked at the paper again to make sure she had the right address. She did, but the person upstairs said she did not know Rose. Emma felt tears mixing with the raindrops on her face. Had she made a mistake? Emma walked away from the building, feeling lost and disappointed. Her shoes made squishing sounds on the wet sidewalk. She had spent almost all her money on the train ticket and bus fare. She only had enough left for one night in a very cheap hotel and maybe some food. But Emma did not give up. She remembered that Mr. Jenkins had said Lucy moved away last year. Maybe this was her old address. Emma knocked on doors of other flats in the building, asking if anyone knew where Lucy Bennet had moved to. An old man on the second floor opened his door slowly. He had thick glasses and walked with a cane. "Lucy Bennet," he said. Thinking hard, "Oh yes, the teacher. Nice girl. Very quiet. She moved away about a year ago when they raised the rent. I think someone said she found a flat near her work." "Do you know where she works?" Emma asked hopefully. "Some school. I think Hamilton Road maybe. Or was it Hamilton Street? I am sorry, dear. My memory is not what it used to be." Emma thanked the old man and walked back into the rain. Hamilton Road was not far away, but Emma had to ask several people for directions. Her feet hurt from walking so much in wet shoes. And she was getting very cold. But something inside her told her to keep going. She found Hamilton Road after another hour of walking. There was a primary school with a red brick wall and a small playground. Children's artwork was displayed in the windows, showing colorful drawings of houses and families and pets. Emma went to the main office. The secretary was a busy woman with short blonde hair. She was typing on a computer and answering the phone at the same time. When Emma asked about Lucy Bennet, the secretary looked up quickly. "Lucy Bennet? Yes, she works here, but she is not in today. She took time off to deal with some family business, something about her aunt's house being sold. I think she went back to her hometown and felt excited for the first time all day." "Do you know which town?" "I am not sure," the secretary said, "but I heard her mention Maple Street. She said she had to clear out her aunt's old house at number 15. Emma could hardly believe it. 15 Maple Street was Rose's address, the same address Mr. Jenkins had told her about. Lucy was there right now, probably looking through Rose's old things. Emma quickly asked for directions to the train station. She needed to go home. back to her own town where this whole story had started. The train ride back felt much longer than the morning trip. Emma was tired, hungry, and her clothes were still damp from the rain. But she felt hopeful again. She was going to find Lucy Bennet, and she was going to return Thomas's ring to Rose's family. When the train arrived at her home station, Emma took a bus to Maple Street. The rain had stopped, and the sun was trying to come out from behind the clouds. Emma walked slowly down the familiar street where she had played as a child. Number 15 was a small house with a blue door and a tiny front garden. Emma could see someone moving round inside. There was a woman standing in the front garden, holding some old photographs. She had dark hair that reminded Emma of the old pictures she had seen of Rose, the woman was. Crying softly. Emma felt nervous as she walked up to the garden gate. Her heart was beating so fast she thought the woman might hear it. This was the moment she had been working toward for days. She took a deep breath and pulled the velvet pouch from her pocket. "Excuse me," Emma called out in a gentle voice. "You Lucy Bennet?" The woman looked up, surprised to see a stranger. Her eyes were red from crying, but they were kind eyes, just like Rose's had probably been. "Yes, I am Lucy Bennet. Who are you? How do you know my name?" Emma's hands were shaking as she held up the small velvet pouch. "My name is Emma. I have something that belongs to your family. Something that belonged to your Aunt Rose. Use a warm." Empathetic Tonima's hands trembled as she slowly opened the small velvet pouch. The golden ring fell gently into her palm, and the afternoon sunlight made the diamond sparkle like a tiny star. Lucy gasped so loudly that a bird flew away from the nearby tree. She put both hands over her mouth and stared at the ring with wide eyes. "Where did you find this?" Lucy whispered through her fingers. Her voice was so quiet that Emma had to lean closer to hear her. Emma sat down on the small stone step by Rose's front door. Lucy sat beside her, never taking her eyes off the ring. Emma began to tell the whole story from the beginning. She spoke slowly and carefully, wanting Lucy to understand everything. She told Lucy about her grandmother's antique shop and how hard it was to keep it open. She told her about Mrs. Wilson bringing in the old jewelry box on that cold Tuesday morning. She explained how she found the ring hidden under the velvet lining, and how she read the tiny words carved inside the gold band. "I knew I could sell it for good money," Emma said honestly. "My rent was due, and I needed the money badly. But something in my heart told me this ring had a story. It belonged to someone who had loved very much." Lucy listened without saying a word. Tears began to flow down her cheeks as Emma continued the story. Emma told her about going to the library with Mrs. Davies, about finding the old newspapers from 1943, about discovering that Thomas and Rose were engaged to be married. "Then I found the sad news," Emma said gently. "Thomas died in France in 1944. He never came home to marry Rose." Lucy nodded slowly. "I knew about Thomas," she said in a voice full of sadness, "and Rose told me about him when I was little. She kept his picture on her dresser for 6 years, right next to her bed. It was a black and white photo of a young man in a soldier's uniform. He looked so handsome and so young." Emma continued her story. She told Lucy about talking to Mr. Jenkins at the post office, about learning that Rose had lived alone on Maple Street for her whole life, about finding Lucy's name in the old records. She told her about spending her last money on the train ticket to London, about walking in the rain, about getting the wrong address. "I was so worried I would never find you," Emma said. "But the secretary at your school told me you were here today. It felt like magic, like Rose and Thomas wanted us to meet." Lucy wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Aunt Rose told me once that Thomas gave her an engagement ring before he went to war. She said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. But after she died 5 years ago, I looked everywhere in this house for it. I searched through every drawer, every box, every corner. I thought maybe she had sold it when she needed money, or maybe she had given it away. I never thought to look for it anywhere else. Lucy stood up and unlocked the blue front door. "Please come inside," she said to Emma. "There is something I want to show you." The house was very quiet and mostly empty. The walls had dark marks where pictures used to hang. The floors were bare wood, and their footsteps echoed in the empty rooms. But the house still felt warm. Like love had lived there for many years. Lucy led Emma to a small bedroom at the back of the house. In the middle of the room sat an old wooden box, about the size of a book. The wood was dark brown and smooth, worn soft by many years of gentle handling. "I saved this box for last," Lucy said, kneeling down beside it. "These are Thomas's letters to Rose. She kept every single one." Lucy opened the box carefully. Inside were dozens of letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The paper was old and yellow, and some of the letters had brown spots from age. But the writing was still clear, written in dark blue ink with a fountain pen. Emma and Lucy sat on the floor together. Lucy untied the ribbon and opened the first letter. It was dated March 1943. "Just after Thomas and Rose got engaged. My dearest Rose," Lucy read aloud. "I cannot stop thinking about how beautiful you looked when you said yes to my proposal. Every time I look at your ring on your finger, I feel like the luckiest man in the world." They read letter after letter together. Thomas wrote about his training with the army. He wrote about missing Rose's smile and counting the days until he could come home. He wrote about their plans for their wedding, about the little house they would buy after the war, about the children they would have someday. In one letter from April 1943, Thomas wrote, "I dream about our life together. My darling, I see us sitting by the fireplace in our own house, with our children playing on the floor. I see us growing old together, still holding hands like we do now." As the letters went on, they could see that the war was getting harder for Thomas. His writing became more serious, but his love for Rose never changed. In every letter, he told her how much he loved her and how the ring would keep them connected even when they were far apart. The last letter was dated June 1944. Thomas's handwriting looked tired, but his words were full of love. "Keep the ring close to your heart, my darling Rose," he wrote. "No matter what happens, it will always bring me home to you. Our love is stronger than anything in this world." Lucy put the letter down and cried. But he never came home, she said through her tears. Emma took Lucy's hand and squeezed it gently. "He did come home, Lucy," she said softly. "Maybe not the way Rose hoped. But he came home through this ring. He came home through these letters. He came home through Rose's memories, and through you, and through the love that Rose carried in her heart for 60 years. Love like that never really dies. It just finds new ways to live." Use a warm, empathetic tone. Elsie stared at the golden ring in Emma's open palm. The diamond caught the last rays of afternoon sunlight coming through Rose's old window for a long moment. Neither woman spoke. The only sound was the soft ticking of an old clock that Lucy had not yet packed away. Then Lucy did something that made Emma's eyes grow wide with surprise. She gently took Emma's hand and slowly closed Emma's fingers round the ring. The metal felt warm against Emma's skin. "Keep it," Lucy said with a smile that was both sad and happy at the same time. "And Rose would want it to belong to someone who understands what real love means. Someone who would spend their last money and travel across the country just to bring a story home to where it belongs. That person is you, Emma. Emma shook her head quickly. But Lucy, this is your family's ring. It belonged to Rose. It should stay with you. Lucy picked up one of Thomas's letters and held it against her heart. These letters are enough for me, she said softly. They tell me everything I need to know about Rose and Thomas. But this ring needs to keep living, keep being part of a love story. Rose waited 6 years for Thomas to come home. She never got to wear this ring as a married woman. Maybe it is meant for someone else now. But I couldn't take something so precious, Emma said, still holding the ring tightly in a closed hand. Lucy stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the small garden where Rose had grown flowers for so many years. You know what? I think, Emma, I think you are family now too. Anyone with a heart like yours, anyone who cares so much about strangers and their stories, anyone who would sacrifice everything to do the right thing, that person is family. The ring should stay in the family. Emma felt tears running down her cheeks, but they were happy tears this time. She had started this journey hoping to give something away, and now she was receiving more than she ever imagined. She hugged Lucy tightly, and both women cried together in Rose's empty house. The next day, Emma took the train back to her little town. She had no money left in her purse, not even enough for a food on the train, but she felt richer than she had ever felt in her whole life. The ring sat safely in the velvet pouch in her coat pocket, close to her heart, just like Rose had probably kept it all those years. When Emma opened her antique shop the next morning, everything looked different to her. The dusty shelves and empty spaces did not seem sad anymore. Instead, they seemed full of possibilities. Emma had an idea that made her feel excited and nervous at the same time. She found a piece of white cardboard and some colored markers. Carefully, she wrote out a sign in her best handwriting. The sign said, "Lost family treasures, reunited here. Do you have old photos, jewelry, or letters with no story? Bring them here and we will help you find where they belong." Emma hung the sign in her shop window where everyone walking by could see it. She was not sure if anyone would come, but she hoped they would. The first person came that very afternoon. It was Mrs. Peterson from the bakery down the street. She brought an old silver locket that she had found in a coat she bought at a charity shop. Inside the locket was a tiny photo of a baby. But Mrs. Peterson did not know who the baby was. Emma felt excited as she took the locket. "Let me help you find this baby's family," she said. "Every picture has a story." Word spread quickly through the small town. People began bringing Emma all sorts of things. There were old wedding rings found in gardens, photo albums bought at garage sales, military medals discovered in attic boxes. Each item had a mystery, and Emma worked hard to solve every one. Emma spent hours in the library with Mrs. Davies, looking through old records and newspapers. She talked to elderly people who remembered stories from long ago. She wrote letters to people in other towns and cities. Slowly, one by one, she began reuniting families with their lost treasures. Her little shop became a place where people came not just to buy things, but to share stories and find hope. Emma still sold antiques, but now she also helped heal hearts and connect families with their past. 6 months after Emma returned Thomas's ring to Lucy, a young man came into her shop. His name was David, and he was a history teacher at the local high school. He had heard about Emma's work from some of his students whose families she had helped. David brought with him an old pocket watch. "This belonged to my grandfather's brother," he said. "He died in World War II, but we never knew much about him. The watch has some words carved on the back, but we cannot read them clearly." Emma looked at the watch carefully. The carving was very old and worn, but she could make out some letters. As she and David worked together to solve the mystery of the watch, they began to talk about many other things too. David was kind and funny, and he cared about history and people's stories just like Emma did. They spent many evenings together, searching through old records and visiting elderly people who might remember David's great-uncle. As they worked side by side, Emma began to feel something she had never felt before. Her heart felt light and happy whenever David smiled at her. 1 year later, David asked Emma to marry him. He proposed in Rose's old garden, which Lucy had given to the town to make into a small park. Emma said yes. And when they were married, in the little church on Baker Street, she wore Rose's ring on her finger. On their first wedding anniversary, Emma and David opened a small museum next to the antique shop. They called it the Memory House. People came from towns far away to see the displays of reunited family treasures and to learn about local history. The museum became famous for helping families find their lost stories. Every evening, Emma would look at Rose's ring sparkling on her finger. She thought about Thomas and Rose, about love that lasts even when people are apart, about how giving something away can bring you more than you ever expected. She had learned that love, kindness, and hope are the greatest treasures in the world, and that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come to us only after we have given our hearts away to help others.